It's week 3, check your knowledge. So just as on the weekly organizer, it's also here that you're only choosing 7. There are 10 problems, but I want you to choose the 7 that you want to do. Your page is going to look different from mine. You'll have this and those 2 boxes, but you don't have this. These are more examples that we're going to go over right now. So for your work, it says for 1 through 5, write the integer that represents each quantity. And then 6, you're showing the location of opposite of 2. What's the opposite of negative 100? Drawing a number line, finding the opposite of the opposites. So let's keep that in mind when we're going through these examples. So let's start on the first one. First example says, what is the opposite of 8? So according to our reading, we see that the opposite of 8 is negative 8. So that integer is negative 8. The next example says, Devin borrows $2 from his friend Stanley. Show the amount that Devin owes as an integer. That integer is negative 2. So let's head back up here for this one. What's the opposite of 8? Right? That would help with finding the location of the opposite of 2 on the number line. This next one, Devin borrows $2. I hope you use the knowledge from this one to help you on number 4 with Griselda and Maddie. This one's the fun opposites of opposites. So this is reminding us that to think of negatives as opposites and of positives. So let's just check it out. The opposites of opposites property says that the opposite of a number is the number itself. So there are 2 opposites there. So you take the opposite once and then you do it again. So the example says, what's the opposite of negative 16? Well, let's do one opposite. The opposite of negative 16 is positive 16. So now our solution is positive 16. Now let's take the opposite of that. Opposite of positive 16 is negative 16. So that's why you get yourself. So hopefully that will help with 9 or 10 if you choose that one. Let's check out this example. Write an integer that represents the quantity. A scuba diver is 35 feet below sea level. Remember that sea level here is a reference point for 0. So below that, numbers below that, as we saw in the reading, those are negative. So our explanation is sea level would be represented by 0 on a number line. So below sea level represents a number below or less than 0. Numbers less than 0 are negative. So the answer is the integer that represents 35 feet below sea level is negative 35. Let's move up here to these examples that I added. Number 1, a helicopter is 300 feet above the landing pad. So let's think about helicopters for a second. I don't know of any helicopters that go in the ocean. So they'd have to at least be on top of the ocean. You might be thinking of some landing pads on top of the ocean that I know of that I've seen in movies. Anyways, so it's either on top of the ocean or above it. Well, if the sea level is 0, numbers above 0 are positive. So that's how we know that the integer is a positive 300 to represent that quantity. Now to find an integer to represent temperature. So the temperature is 10 degrees below 0. So once again, we know from the reading that below 0 or to the left of 0, those are negative numbers. Those are negative integers. So our solution is the integer is negative 10. And I'm hoping that one will help with number 3. So take some time to choose your 7. With these type of problems, it's hard to show your work. So it's okay just to put down your solution, but I'd love it if you tell me more about your thinking. So if you would say a submarine is 200 feet below sea level, you know that the integer is blank because below sea level means that it is below 0. and numbers below 0 are negative. So that's pretty drawn out solution. And if you just wrote down the number, that would be acceptable this time. But notice in the instructions, that's what it tells us. Just write the integer. It doesn't tell us to write a whole sentence. So the key is really to look at your instructions. The instructions just say write an integer. Okay, so once again, choose your 7. Remember that numbers below 0 are negative and numbers above 0 are positive.